Good afternoon. Welcome to special meeting of council for the Corporation of the Township of Minden Hills for Thursday, June 18th, 2026. In today's agenda, we have a delegation representing the Eastern Ontario Regional Network regarding the community-wide affordability and government structure study taking place in the county and municipalities. Following that, there will be a closed session meeting near the end of this meeting. Madam Clerk, please proceed with roll call.
Councillor Sisson,
Present.
Councillor Staney,
Present.
Councillor McKelvey,
Present.
Councillor Johannesson is joining us virtually today. Councillor Ingram,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Shell,
Present.
and Mayor Carter.
Present. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Minden Hills is located on Treaty 20 Michisagi territory and in the traditional territory of the Michisagi and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. I now declare this meeting to order at 1:01 p.m. Madam Clerk, please read the resolution for the approval of the agenda.
Moved by Councillor Staney, seconded by Councillor Ingram. Be it resolved that the June 18th, 2026 special council meeting agenda be approved to circulate.
All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none, we will move on to item 5. We'll welcome Jim Pine and Maureen Adams. If you can start and at your leisure and leave us all in wonder.
Well, let me, on behalf of all three of us, Lisa Severson as well. I'll let Lisa introduce herself just a second. And Maureen, we are thrilled to be here and happy to be here to spend some time with you. And thank you for making yourselves available through the special meeting process so that we have what we hope is a real good back and forth about the study. So a little bit about me. I'm helping EORN on the facilitation side, engagement side as part of the study project. We're at that early phase now. I spent my career in local government, working local and with the provincial government in municipal affairs. And my last paying job was as the CAO for Hastings County. I was there for about 21 years before decided it was time to walk out the door and retire. And I've clearly failed at retirement, but I'm really thrilled to be here as part of the team. So I'll turn to Maureen.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Council, for having us this afternoon. I'm Maureen Adams, recently retired CAO from the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Blanchard. Prior to that, I was also the CAO for the City of Cornwall and have a bit of a finance background also as well in the municipal sector. And so my municipal career is about 20 years, but then I have 20 years of private sector experience as well. So anyway, thank you for having us. Looking forward to conversations this afternoon. And look forward to hearing from you.
Lisa.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be back in Minden Hills. I'm Lisa Severson. As you may know, I'm the Director of Communications for EORN, but I am the project lead for this undertaking. Prior to joining EORN in 2009, I worked at the United Counties of Police in Drumble. So a municipal background. So good to be here, and thank you for participating today.
So we do have a little presentation deck to go through. I think you may have it or seen it. And Maureen and I will be back and forth doing some of the talking, but please feel free to ask questions of all three of us at any particular time. And right at the outset, from all of us on the EORN study team, we want to say a big thank you to Cynthia and to all of her team. There's been a lot of information that's been asked of for the study, and it's been willingly given and thoroughly given. So, and Cynthia and her team have been really participating with us incredibly well. So thank you, Cynthia, on behalf of all of the staff team at the municipality. We really appreciate it. So let's talk a little bit about today. And I said at the start, please, let's, if we can, consider this as a real, just as informally as we can, as we go through the process. So what's important is hearing from you, not so much hearing from us, but hearing from you. And we'll try to stimulate the discussion a little bit, but please feel free. So if we can go to the next slide. Really what we want to do today is, as I said, is to hear from you. But we, as part of the study process, we're really trying to understand what fiscal financial situation is in all 5 municipalities that make up the county. And so that we understand the fiscal environment that you face and others face as we look at what might be in the future. We're looking at pressures and you know that there's lots of pressures on your services and on budgets that you're mindful of. And we'd like to make sure we understand those as best that we can. And really today, the last one is about trying to gain some perspectives at this point in the study around what long-term approaches might be and whether change is needed, what kind of change should that look like. And right at the start, we'd like to let you know that we have not landed on a preferred model or any model at this stage. We're in the information gathering point in this exercise, just so you can feel comfort that we don't have some kind of pre-canned or pre-programmed approach. It really is about what we hear from you and from the folks, and including citizens and other interested parties as we build the models that will eventually come back and report to County Council at the end of July. So today is about having a group discussion, but feel free anytime you want to get a hold of us to do that on your own if you'd like. We've got a little bit of a couple of exercises that we'd like you to do, and if we have time, we can talk about them, or you can just fill them in. We'll take them away and look at them. And there's lots of opportunities for feedback, I think, and we'll show you a slide in a minute. So today is about having a chat, if that's okay. Next slide. Wherever we've gone in this, and we've been at this for a little while now, and particularly this week, wherever we've gone, we've gotten the question, why now? Why are you doing this work now? You know, here we are in June, there's an election coming up. Why now? Well, I guess the first answer is the county's decided that they wanted to study, but it really is, I think, as a result of what we understand is some of the difficult work that had to go into budgeting this year in all of the municipalities, and a sense that the costs continue to rise, and that's going to continue to put pressure on services and delivery of services. So County Council directed staff to investigate what options might exist, and that's really the study that we're doing now. And there is a sense that it's a good time to be looking at, if I can call it, our own house and seeing what we can take care of ourselves. That I think the province expects, from the sounds of things, expects municipalities to be doing that. And it's always better to be able to say that we've done some good work and we'd like to share it with you, Mr. and Mrs. Province, rather than to not have done the work. So it is a good time, I think, to do this. And of course, the election is coming up, and any decisions on whatever choice for moving forward will rest with the next councils coming in. That's just the decision that County Council made in establishing the study, so that new councils coming in are going to make a decision on where to go. But we hope we give them really good information that they can look at and make some kind of informed decision together. So doing that, we want to, as I say, make sure we understand your financial state and what the pressures are. We are going to be looking at different governance models. We haven't landed on one, as I said, any preferred one, but we're looking at other jurisdictions that how people responded to pressures and the need for change. And as I said before, doing our due diligence in this kind of way just gives some opportunity for better and strengthened advocacy with the provincial government and also with the federal government, because they're a funder as well. So that's what we're going to do. The next slide is about, you know, in detail, some of the things that we're going to be analyzing. I've mentioned a few of them now, but one of the ones that always comes up is that people want us to be aware of the unique nature of their municipality and various kinds of attributes of the county generally. we'd like to understand from you what yours are. If you have any thoughts about what you see as Union Hill's unique character or the county's unique character, and that we should be mindful of in any kind of work around doing governance differently through the study. We're looking at the service delivery review that was done in 2022 to get information from that and ideas, of course. We're also talking in the community. We have 4 public open houses coming up, one in each of the local municipalities next week. And we hope to hear from interested ratepayers, taxpayers, and citizens who might come out to those. And we're trying to promote the fact that there's a survey available for anyone to participate in, and it closes on the 26th, 8th of June. And we're going to show you some information about early observations from that survey coming up in a few minutes. So, and as I said, we're heavy into looking at what kind of models might make sense as we go through it and learn some lessons from those who have done it before. So that's what we're going to be doing at a high level in preparation for writing the report. And the next slide, just to let you know who the team is. It's a small team, but we think a pretty good team. We've introduced ourselves. Our project management lead is Linda Assad, who's got about 40 years from Bell Canada, actually, in project management. So she's keeping us on track with the work that we need to do and making sure we do all of the things that are required. And Jennifer Stover from Peterborough County is helping with the financial analysis. And we're getting some support from Red Brick Communications, who understands the municipal sector really well and has been working with the county on other things. So small team, but we think it's a good one. And we've got lots to do in the next really 4 weeks in order to get to July 31st. Next slide. We want you to know while we're up here in the communities, this is who we're meeting with and when we're meeting with folks. It's been a pretty jam-packed week so far. We've had great sessions with your staff. Yesterday, we had about 90 employees from across all of the municipalities with us. A couple of days before, we had just under 90, I think, in another session. And the good news is that the staff are really interested in this work and have been sharing their thoughts and their views with us, which is what we'd hoped for. So they've been really engaged, and we're going to show you in just a minute kind of where their thinking it lands at this point in time. We're going to meet with library staff, community leaders. We have another meeting tonight after this with community leaders and those open houses that we talked, including a virtual open house as well. So we're trying to make it as accessible as possible. As I say, the community survey is ongoing through the wadeinhaliburton.ca portal. And I've been saying we will fail if people feel they don't have an opportunity to participate. So we're doing all that we can. Try and make it as accessible as possible. Next slide. So for the engagement sessions that we're doing, we have some key goals. Key among them is building trust in the process. We want people to understand the process and feel comfortable enough to participate in it. So I say we want to touch as many people as we can and hear from them, give them good information, offer as many engagement opportunities, and really make them feel and know that we are listening. So on the right-hand side, is some of the tactics and tools that we have on the go, from the wait-in survey and social media down to targeted media advertising. You start to hear that coming this week. I think there's some radio ads and print ads coming out to make people as aware. That's some of the, we've heard that in other council meetings, a concern that let's make sure it's as broadly distributed as possible. So we're trying to do that. So those are what we'd like to achieve in terms of the engagement process. Next slide. So also to set the stage is talking a little bit about the financial and fiscal position. I'm going to turn it over to Maureen, who's a pro in that area, and lead it through.
Thank you. So on the slide, and many of you are probably familiar with this, but I think one challenge for this region is that 98% of your assessment base is the residential class. So when you look at other areas in the province, on average, your residential base is probably being 35 to 45% increase 90. So it limits your capacity to look at other classes to support other services that need to be funded and your infrastructure. There's been no updates to the market values for property assessments since 2016. We have been in conversations with the province. I don't believe that there's any indication in the next 2 years that that is going to change. So we're still waiting on that. Average household income in this region is 17% below the provincial average, which demonstrates an affordability component that we need to be mindful of. Alberta County relies heavily on a tourism-based economy with a lot of seasonal service demand. So you have a lot of seasonal residents that put demands on services, such as your first responders. There are services that are mandated that are high in cost, that are beyond local control and affects, money that could be spent on local priorities at times. We know that federal and provincial infrastructure funding is unpredictable and by all means insufficient. So when you're looking at your aged infrastructure and the challenges to fund that, that's something that we also need to take a look at and see if there's a way to start to be prepared for that with your infrastructure that, much of it could be 50, 60 years old and is at a point where it will start to need to be replaced. Next slide, please. This slide is a slide for Haliburton County at the upper tier. It just speaks to the 2026 increase in their budget that was required this year. Much of it is driven by external pressures when you look at services provided by City of Kawartha Lakes through a shared services agreement, impact local health. And so what that does is that also makes it difficult to address local priorities and initiatives that might want to be held in the lower tiers. To the next slide. On this slide, this is combined expenses across all of the municipalities. It speaks to how your overall budget is just under $81 million. Tax levy is 58 million. There's funding from upper levels of government that total approximately 17 million. And then the balance would be through fees and services and permit fees, for example. And the chart really speaks to where the lion's share of your expenditures are spent. So if we look at the bottom, I know it's a little bit hard to read, but just under 27 million goes to transportation services. That would include your maintenance of your roadways, your bridges, your infrastructure, your capital, protective services, 12 million, health services, 9 million, environmental, general government recreation, they're all at 9 million too. So just trying to provide a landscape of where money is spent through municipal budgets. Move to the next slide. So on this slide, we just wanted to highlight a couple of high, a view from 30,000 feet. We will be doing more analysis on the financial side. But across all of the municipalities, the total value of their assets are just over $1 billion. There's an annual funding gap of 8 million. Total debt across all of the municipalities is 31 million, and total reserves is 39 million. And we're not here to comment on whether those are the right numbers as far as levels. But if you look at your reserves as a percentage of your total asset value, it's about 3%. And so sometimes when you're looking at capital projects and infrastructure, sometimes reserves are a component of trying to find an avenue to fund some of those projects. And if your reserves are at 3% of your asset value, then potentially that might not be the source of funding that you're gonna tap into for those projects. Slide.
I'm going to switch back over. This is information that our team put together late the other night, and we shared it with County Council yesterday. We were Algonquin Highlands. Today we were sharing it as well. And we wanted to do this because it's just a point in time reflection of what elected officials, those who filled in the survey, seem to be telling us. So in total, 13 of the 24 elected officials across all the municipalities submitted responses to the survey, the pre-survey. So we're dealing with about half, but I think there's some interesting observations from this. In terms of the need for this study, there seemed to be amongst the respondents a strong yes around an agreement around the need for the study. There is a pretty strong agreement that there are areas that could be streamlined in terms of services, and we need to, sort of do a deeper dive into what the streamline means, what would it look like. But it indicated to us that there's certainly an interest in looking at the way things are provided now. Interestingly, in the middle one, the municipalities collaborate effectively together. There is a split opinion, I think, on this, and it's weighted to the side that says we probably don't collaborate as effectively as we could. The 8 respondents say disagree that municipalities collaborate effectively. So it's just pause for reflection around that state of the nation in terms of people thinking. But when you go to the next one, there's very strong around being open to change, around governance issues, governance changes. So I think that's a really important point to take under consideration, is that while we might have some concerns about whether we're doing this well together, there's strong opinion that maybe we can look at doing it, whatever that might be. There's a real sense that and an openness to looking at changes, and that's a very positive thing from our point of view. And then a little bit of a mixed bag around an understanding about roles and responsibilities being clear. It's something I'd like to, from our side, we'd like to delve in a little bit more and understand what that really means. So it seemed, it was interesting. We don't quite know what it all implications or what it really, speaks to, but something that we thought you should see. So, yeah, sure, Tammy, go ahead. Counselor, sorry, through you to.
Tammy's fine. I just want to go back and make sure I heard you right. So these are the 22 politicians in the county of Halliburton that were asked to fill this out, and only 13, is that what you said?
There's 24 elected officials in the county, and I think 13 filled them out.
See, that in itself is really disappointing. So just want to make sure I understood that statement correctly.
Yeah, and we're not sure what the reasons why those who didn't fill it in, but it's also a fact that 13 did. So just letting you know the information, that's part of our transparency piece around the information that I'm sharing. But it is a fair question to ask, and maybe we'll find if we do this again that we'll get a more fulsome response from folks, and that's fine. But as of today, that's where we stand in terms of who responded. Most interesting things of what people are saying. So that's from the elected official side. The next slide, couple of slides, are about what staff are saying. And we broke it out in a little bit of detail for you to show you what's on the minds of your staff. So we received 105 responses to the survey from staff. That's pretty good, I think, generally speaking. And it was from all 5 of the municipalities, including the county. And there's some interesting things that I think came out of it. Of particular interest, and one that has sort of caught people's attention, is staff are really concerned about affordability. And it's affordability from the taxpayers' lens. And we think that's really good news, that your employees and employees across all of the municipalities understand the need for services provided as an affordable way as possible. I think we'd all be really concerned if nobody cared, but it's just the opposite. And you can see heavily, strongly around being concerned about the affordability, and that's great. Quality of life, we've got a little box there, but again, people rate the quality of life here as good and very good, and strongly so. So that's great as well. We asked them to identify the top 10 priorities for all the municipalities across the county. You can see, again, how that came out. So again, improving affordability for taxpayers, number one. I'm sure the taxpayers, if anybody's listening in, will be pleased to know that. That staff are certainly interested and concerned about it. They're very concerned about efficient service delivery and sufficient staffing. And those two probably go together at some point. But clearly they're interested in doing the best job that they can in the best way that's possible. They're very concerned about infrastructure and infrastructure funding, and perhaps that's not surprising. You know, your staff are out there, they're the ones touching the infrastructure every day and looking at, and they, in our discussions in person, people were talking about the need to invest where we can. So the question is, how much money do you have to invest, and how do you do that? They also see economic growth as important. And many of the staff talked about economic growth from the point of view of being able to keep their kids here and other families keep their kids here, to find them jobs, to stay in the community. So that's a top of mind issue for your employees. And then they're very open to doing things differently, modern tools and technologies, and taking advantage of those things. So I think you've got a staff that understand, you know, from a taxpayer's point of view, the costs, and they're also willing to look at ways to do things differently. So on the whole, I think open to looking at options. You can see in the middle box around services that need more collaboration from the staff point of view. Roads and public works at the top, planning and development, a lot about planning and development throughout the course of our discussions, and you can go down the list, but those frontline services are important to folks, that's for sure. And then what's interesting, at least from our point of view, is the last box around the current organization of government in the county, the two-tier system. You know, you've got quite a number who think it's effective, but there are more who have a neutral or ineffective or very ineffective view. And that's got to give us some pause to think about, why is that? And we really like to try and understand that. But they know that providing affordable services to ratepayers is topic number one, priority number one. Maybe the way we're doing it gives us a pause to say, maybe we need to look at whatever that might be. So this is what's on your staff's mind. It is 105. We are getting more surveys coming in from staff, the paper surveys. People, not everybody had access to the online tool. So in fact, we received quite a number today, and it's a paper version. So we'll be updating these numbers. But we thought a pretty good response rate from the employees. They're engaged. They want to know what's going on. And they're interested in, I think, offering some solutions, which is, we found to be very encouraging.
There was one other thing, having seen or gone through this presentation yesterday and thinking it over. One thing, a lot of the staff are taxpayers also.
Yeah.
They live here. And so, you know, this, you know, the decisions that are made and the way we do things affect them. So they're sort of answering two different views.
And I think that's just tells you, you know, their concern and their interest is strong. It's very good. So that's a little snapshot of what your staff are thinking, generally speaking, across the county. The next slide, I think, is we just tried to summarize some of the key themes that we took from that information. It's a little bit hard to read, but you can see, you know, sort of their issues around roads and infrastructure and planning inconsistencies. We've heard quite a bit about the fact that there are 5 official plans, and there's some different processes that go on between the municipalities that are different, and people are recognizing that. This may not be the greatest approach, some concern around service duplication, and no surprise that fourth annual job security. And you would expect that, and it's normal. And in any change, you have to have a very strong, effective human resource policy. And if there's any kind of transition, to make sure you do it to the best of your, very best of your ability. We've had some experience doing that, but it is certainly on people's minds. And you can go down the list, the autonomy versus amalgamation, pretty divided on what the right approach is in terms of how to proceed. But also some areas where things are working quite well in terms of customer service of libraries, economic development, snow plowing came up, and a few gaps. And one thing that keeps coming up in all groups and with elected officials is, remember that this is a big area. Geographically, Alberta County is a big area, and people live in all parts of the county, and maybe their needs will be different from different locations in the county. So be mindful of that, is what they've been telling us when we think about what to do going forward. In the last slide, before you start to talk to us, if I can put it that way, is update the first week of the public survey results. So this is just really 5 days worth of submissions, and we had 106 so far, and well, I'm sure we'll get many more. But we thought this is a good time to let you know what folks in the community are saying via the survey. And some interesting things, I think. 86% are concerned about the cost of living, and 75% are concerned about rising taxes and costs. That's probably not a surprise, but that's, strongly reflected in their responses. The desire for change is interesting. You're saying 65% saying significant changes are needed. And interestingly, almost 90% said they want more municipal cooperation. We need to figure out what that means. But that sort of mirrors some of the, stuff we've been hearing from staff and from others about and elected officials about cooperation. The good news is 3/4 of the respondents said they rate the quality of life here as good or very good. And interestingly, we asked them about, if that's the case, what are your top values? And you can see how it came out. The natural environment being strongly of interest to people in protecting it. We like the quiet lifestyle, the waterfront, of course, and the lakes, and that small town feel comes out strongly, and certainly a sense of community. So these are a group of folks who know what they like, and I think know what they cherish a little bit. And that's important when you're thinking about what kind of change might be the best, right? So we always will keep those things in mind as we think about the future. On the governance side, which is really what we're about through this study, there was a fairly low interest, if I can put it that way, or priority on local identity versus cost control. So cost control seems to be, on the affordability side, a big part of that. And interestingly, at least from our point of view, we haven't heard what we've heard. 85% believe that they can maintain identity even in a change. So that's a good news thing, because local identity is important. Always keeping as a consideration. We were doing our work, and I've spoken about this in the city of Quinte West almost nearly 30 years ago. We're coming together as 4 municipalities. That was top of mind as well. And we were very purposeful in trying to figure out, how do we maintain that local identity? And the fact that you have to work at it and you have to invest in some of the local communities still feel, a part of the whole, and that they're getting attention. Those are things that the new councils can, or new council can absolutely deal with. And interestingly, 70% said the current two-tier system isn't working. Really doesn't serve residents well. We don't know whether that's an education issue, but we'd like to, houses drill down a little bit more into that to understand as best we can what they really mean by that. And their top priorities that came out of the survey so far: enhanced intermunicipal cooperation, make sure affordability is at top of mind. We're doing these things, make sure you protect our and improve our quality of the services that we're already getting. What else can we do, I guess? Take care and support the quality of life. So, yeah, those are the things to keep in mind. Some of them. And then we just asked, what are the most important service priorities that you can see in that box? Emergency service. That surprise, good demographics perhaps, but roads, bridges, protecting the environment. Interesting. Recreation breaks right up there too. So one thing we've observed is that this is pretty active. Heard it, conversation. People want to be out and about, and they want active facilities. Different kind of facilities. So again, let me stop there. I've been talking a lot, and I'd like to hear and read some. I'd like to hear any thoughts or observations that might. What we've told you just now. Saying, or still less. Good stuff. We're gonna take some notes if that's okay. That's great.
To you, Mayor. Appreciate all the work you've done here, and I know it's just a tip of the iceberg getting started here for sure. So some of these questions may not relate yet, but they're in my head, so I have to ask. Biggest concern I have is if we amalgamate, which I am in favor of doing that, like combining in one tier of government. What happens when the funding stops from the province at that level? Because it's stopping everywhere, if you get what I'm saying. Like it stopped at Toronto, it stopped at Peterborough. They're not getting the funding. So what's going to improve the funding capability for us in this? Perfect.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a very good question. I think that given the size of your region and your population and the rural component, I think you can anticipate that your own PF will continue. That's what we'll see in other jurisdictions. And your funding, that is the Canada Build funding, things like some of the federal gas funding and rest of, like that's going to continue. Right, so that should continue. We've had questions with respect to grant writing and operating, grant writing opportunities, but it wouldn't be necessary. You're not competing with each other. You're probably submitting applications that are, maybe looking at the priorities of the region as well. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think your core funding coming from upper levels of government, that should be maintained.
Should be.
Yes.
You just maybe yesterday you talked about sort of the history of some of that funding.
Absolutely.
And maybe just illustrate that fact, because obviously it is a concern.
So OMPF, many of our rural regions in Eastern Ontario benefit from OMPF. Originally, for the last 15 or 20 years, it's been 500 million. It has not been increased. It's never been increased. I shouldn't say that, but not in the last many years. And not only that, there are more regions that are probably tapping into it that are eligible for some of that funding too, right? So when you see decreases in your OMPF funding, it's likely given how the performance or the demographics of your community versus, other regions. So a little while ago, we saw more northern communities being able to, access that funding as well, or different components of it. And that's affected, some of our townships, our rural municipalities and as an example. So we have seen certainly, and part of the conversation that Mr. Mayor might be referring to is we've also seen significant downloading from the province over a number of years, right? We don't necessarily believe that that's going to change, right? I don't think there's a way to go back and and think that they're going to do things differently. I think this is the reality that municipalities are facing. And so it's how do we prepare ourselves like on a go forward basis, and for some of Jim's comments earlier, like how do we set ourselves up for success here to let the province know we're doing everything that we can to be able to be prepared for advocacy and other opportunities that might present themselves in the region.
But
The EORN, or not the EORN, sorry, MPAC, not touching anything in 16 years to look at reassessment and that. I know that's a big scary thing for governments because it's going to be phenomenal if it's true, done properly. That would go a long way to bringing more income in, would it not? If we're updating the value of homes?
So I think perhaps if I could respond to that, Mr. Mayor, I think that you would find most municipalities and most treasurers, you look at the budget or the levy that's required to deliver services, and then you use the assessment base to fairly distribute or collect what the property taxes are required. But part of our concern with that delay of impact assessment is that you see areas within jurisdictions where some properties have changed at a greater rate than others, right? So when you think about, potentially in Haliburton County, I'm not sure, but I would imagine that, kind of moving through COVID, the waterfront seasonal property values have probably gone up in value, and they may have gone up in value at a greater rate than the other properties in the core of some of your hamlets and your towns. And so what that market assessment should do is it should start to make it, fair, like get that assessment where it should be, and then you levy your taxes on where it should be. But, I don't want people to think that just because their assessment is going to go up, their taxes are going to go up, because typically, depending, you just, your tax rate might actually like drop depending what happens. And it's our understanding as well, like MPAC, I think is ready to go. They do want to do this. And it's the provinces that's holding it back currently, but it will be a massive undertaking when it does happen.
If I could just add, Mr. Mayor, there, and I said this, I think at county council, but I can't remember. If you go onto YouTube and Google impact property taxes, they have a short little 2.5 minute video that really explains it well. And I used to use that when we were doing training sessions for newly elected councillors. We play it, and they've done a really good job of trying to explain the difference between property taxes and assessment and how it all works. It's really just as Maureen explained it, but it's graphic and they do a good job. So I would highly, recommend that.
that's oh,
So I'm really interested in this public survey, week 1, and of course it is only week 1, so it's early in the game. But how often will we get updates on that?
The information is gathered every Friday and then it's analyzed, similar to this. We have to have an interim report into the CAO at the county at the end of June. As Jim had said, the survey is finished June 28th. So the final numbers for that survey will be in the interim report, as well as the final report, which is due to the county at the end of July. So I don't have a problem sharing. We could ask that a slide like this be shared with all of the municipalities on a weekly basis. It wouldn't happen on the Friday because that's when we pull the numbers, but you would probably get it the following week if that's something that the municipalities would like to see.
I personally, I think probably everybody around this table would like to see that. I find it interesting because I've spent too much time on screen lately, but I've been watching you at Dysart, and I watched you at the county, and I watched you at Open House this morning. And these are the top priorities of the public. And yet I'm not sure that the politicians are getting it. That's just maybe that's unfair of me, but everybody seems to be concerned about they're going to lose their identity. And, the public aren't as concerned about that. Or will that even happen? I mean, I survived amalgamation in 2001. And that was a big concern about we're all going to lose our identity. Well, Lauchlin's still there, Galut's still there, Dorset's still there. Everybody, Irondale's still there. Like nobody's identity really gets lost in this. It's down to financial sustainability. And I just feel really strongly that everybody needs to realize that I don't think identity will be lost. But the other thing I would like you to touch on, if you would, is if, and it's still an if, we all need to read the report when you're finished it, but if it goes to one tier, the next council has 4 years to deal with that, and there will be a transition board, I believe, established to try and, I mean, that's what I went through in Hanson and Snowden at Lutterworth. There was a transition board. They only had 1 year to get things and it was tight. But does the next county council or the next council members get to decide we might want a restructuring board that's going to work for 2 years? Or how does that happen?
Well, first of all, the decision has to be made by the incoming councils as to whether you want to do anything at all. So that'll be their decision. And if you're back, you'll get a chance to help make that decision as well. You need an implementing body. If the decision is made that you're going to go, whatever model you pick, and let's just, as an example, if you went one tier, you will need a body. And I went through that as well when we established the city of Coyne West. There was formal transition board established that was empowered to make the decisions to set up the new organization. That board was made up of representatives, elected representatives from the 4 municipalities. And I think we had equal representation, despite the population or whatever. Felt there should be 2 from each. And I'm going back 30 years thereabouts, but I think I'm still have it accurately. And they were charged with making this thing come together. And they had a year, not on yours. And it was part of the restructuring order that the minister approved, right? And we've had discussions today, particularly the issue of, well, what happens with a municipality where there's a municipality that has debt, and we don't have debt, or we have reserves and they don't have reserves. Those things get built into the restructuring order and protected or ring fenced so that the people who, let's say the municipality that generated the reserves themselves, that ward, if we call it a ward, will continue to get, until that reserve is exhausted, the benefit of it. Likewise, until the debt's paid off, it stays where it was originally generated. And that's important. So that's a transitional thing. And it might take a few years or years to work through that debt or those reserves. And in the interim, you probably are still making common reserves because there's areas where will be active. So those things get dealt with in the implementation phase. But I would suggest that you would very much need an empowered body to make the decision. You have to make decisions on ultimately what would the organization, how are the staff going to be treated? All of those things are critical. But you've gone through it, Tammy. I've gone through it. It's certainly doable. And whether it takes a year or a little bit more, that's something that was obviously be ironed out. If you don't have somebody making decisions, it's really hard.
I think also the province will have their say.
Yes.
However, this is going to be done. But they have an interest, and their experience with both the health units and so on, it maybe did not work out the way they intended when they started down the path. So they certainly play a role. Councillor Saini.
Thank you, through the mayor. I'd like just to point out that about 12 years ago, I did a survey of the county. It wasn't as thorough as yours, of course, but one of the first things that everybody said what do you like about where you live? It was the view. The view was consistent. And when I see this survey, it shows the consistency. It's the natural environment, 75%. So this is quite, even though this is a short span of time that we're doing this in, it just seems like as a community and as an area, we're pretty consistent over the decades. Thank you.
McKelvey.
The other one I have is the financial data. And you talk about municipal budgets, financial statements, the financial data that you utilize for assets and the debt. Where did you get that from? If finance or, because some of us are a little behind on our finance reporting. So I didn't know if you used FIRs or talk to each individual to get current.
So the financial data is being gathered by EORN and Jennifer Stover in Peterborough County. Staff have been very cooperative in submitting the data, by the way. So the treasurers have been very good to get us the information. Some of it is taken from FIRs, and then I think some of the information as well has come from treasurers for additional information. So I think everybody has provided the information that we've asked for and that we require at this time. And I think that when we look at that data, we're probably going to look at that data like more so in July after we finish these engagement sessions and the next this week and next week. And then we start to figure out maybe what are some potential models that we should be looking at and how do we financially cost them or take a look at the impact of a different structure.
Okay, so when my concern is, are we comparing apples to apples? Because the Minden Hills and Highlands East, I believe, haven't filed their 24 FIR. So I'll just. So yeah, well, anybody could know, they just have to go on and check. But so what happens then if you're not really comparing apples to apples? If you're looking at Dysart's 24 FIR compared to our 23 FIR, and then as far as debt, some townships haven't gone out to debenture things because again, they haven't got these reportings done. So I'm trying to figure out how do you get the most accurate information?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I have not looked at the data yet. I believe that the data is currently being scrubbed.
Okay.
And so from our perspective, I think we do have some good information or some good data to start to work through this. Part of the conversations that I've been having with the EORN team too is that when we start to come out with some financial modeling, I do think that we need to also share some of that with our local treasurers, right? We need to make sure that the information that we do have looks like it is the right information as well.
Just for some perspective, it says 86% are concerned about cost of living. How many people actually filled out the survey? For the first week? 106. Okay, that helps me. Thank you. Thank you. I'm hoping you'll get one in a second. Yes, so, yeah. We'll get the flow going.
Councillor Sisson.
You keep talking about the next term of council. So can this be done in the next 4 years and put in place before that? And if so, do you have any projection of what the cost savings might be if we do amalgamate?
Well, I can't answer the last question yet. I think part of what we're going to be doing is looking at the models.
Okay.
And hopefully that will give you some information around that. In terms of timing, you can certainly do it in the next 4 years. You could probably do it in 2 years if you wanted to.
Good.
So
Thank you.
we're just at that point in the election cycle where, you know, it probably makes sense to leave it to the new councils coming in. Because you have to set the election up and all that sort of stuff. So
I think it's an important step that we had envisioned that the county was to be able to do this study and then have a number of options sort of presented to the next councils. The next councils can say, you know what, we're interested in 1 and 3. Let's cost them out now. Let's figure out how much it would cost for us to do it and how much it would potentially save us or cost us or whatever. But that's the fine details will be done with the next council. We're just trying to give them a state of where we are and what some of their what some of their options are. Councillor Saney?
Great, thank you. Question for you, and maybe this is the next phase that I'm asking for. But when I talk about this working together better as for municipalities and maybe amalgamation, what I'm getting back is what you raised. One of the things is our identity is different communities we have, you know, Lachlan, whatever it might be. And so that representation is a piece of it. But the other one is representation as a governance body. And how that governance body is going to represent those various communities that have different priorities, keeping that small library as an example versus a heavy pressure. Transportation, how that transportation system is going to work. Those kinds of things are really going to be applicable to more of the governance than it is our identity in a sense. So is that the next stage, or is that something you'll be able to address? Thank you.
I think it's really the next stage in terms of how you want to organize yourselves, and then going forward, how do you determine the priorities? I always think that local government's great strength is that is the collaboration that has to happen in order to make things work. And it takes time to grow a new community and then you know, get it functioning in the way you want it. City of Coney West is about 26 years into it. It functions well. There are growing pains as people get used to it, including the elected officials. But when there's a will and a commitment, you know, it could happen. You've got to sort through all of that stuff. It's not going to happen overnight in terms of getting it absolutely the way you want it, because there is discussion that has to happen. That's the great strength of local government, my own opinion. Is it happens and it's real and it works, but it's also a journey. How's that for everyone? Good. Yeah. Well, it's hard to know exactly.
Further questions? Bill?
So maybe it's not a question, but they did the service delivery review. I think it was in 22. Nothing's really come on that to get it moving. So to me, that needs to be, you know, we can look at different models. I don't know how you would get the staff to buy in and just run with enthusiasm on combining service levels at one or another. That's certainly not what happened when the service delivery review came out. It just, but I think the whole staffing uncertainty is a really big thing right now, and it was a big thing when we did it many years ago. And I think it's really, really important that the staff are kept informed of, you know, what happens. And a lot of times, you know, staff at the local levels are trying to do 3 different jobs off the corners of their desk. They may have 3 different titles. I mean, just an example, I was clerk, treasurer, and tax collector when I was part of the amalgamation, but you tend to get more single positions that are really the focus. So really nobody gets laid off. They just maybe get a different focus in their career paths. But I think it's really important that somehow we keep the staff really well informed and try to eliminate their concerns as much as we can. I don't know how that plays out, but I would just ask that really be a focus.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And we've had those frank
That's good.
conversation with staff. They've asked the question yesterday, you know, and my answer is that there is a process to go through, and we'll go through the process. You know, I don't disagree with you at all. And at the end of the day, you know, there's a rearranging and there's different jobs that get created because of the different kind of organization, et cetera, and try to fit people in where skills are best used. So it takes a bit of time to do that. But keeping them informed is absolutely essential. That's why I think we've got some good response, because we've made ourselves available. You've allowed your staff to go. Every staff member has been given the opportunity, as I understand it, to participate.
That's wonderful.
And that, hats off, because that's the way you fight right. So we'll continue to do that.
Mr. Ingram.
Through you here, quick question. I don't even know if it really concerns you guys or not. I'm gonna ask. We have municipalities with unions, and we have them that inside, we have them outside, certain departments have them, others don't. How does that play out? Is that all the unions deal, or is that negotiated with a committee, or how does that go forward? Really curious about that.
Yeah. That will be part of the human resource strategy that you're going to put in place. And yes, it will be dealt with in some fashion as you go forward. And it'll be part of the establishment of the organization. It'll be something that a management board will have to, or a transition board will have to deal with as we set up. But yeah, it'll absolutely be addressed in whatever fashion, but it will be.
Mr. Sini.
Yeah, so I'm going to come back to my question about representation again. And I know that's beyond this particular study, but I also know there's a lot of municipalities that have amalgamated and have different governing structures. Some are very large, and it's very interesting to see how they come from so far away and work together. So I'm just wondering if we could just have an addendum to the study, just identifying some of those places so we begin to have a model of how it's worked in other places. Just an addendum to the study, not to further that. Thank you.
It would be helpful and interesting, as you're saying that, to know what elected officials think. If you're imagining a single body, let's just say, what would that council look like? How many should it be? What should you have a ward system? Now, those are the sort of fundamental things that you need to discuss and think about. And how many representatives should be from a ward? Should the mayor be elected at large? Well, that's the case, that would be. But, just start to think about what would that look like? And then, you always think about, what kind of committee structure you would need to manage the operations. So I would just sort of encourage you to think about it and share, some ideas around that. It's really becomes down to a decision that's made locally. Yeah. So
But that decision will actually be the next council's, am I correct?
Yeah.
So we here at this level up until whatever date it is, November something, we will not have any input in that. It'll be the next municipal council's level. Well, my understanding. Yes, that's my understanding too. So, and I mean, there's all this, what are we gonna call it? Oh, it just starts up such nasty discussions. So, I mean, again, back in previous, I don't know what happened in yours, but the name was picked after the public input was solicited, and that could be the same thing for this, correct?
Yeah.
And there's no preconceived, it's going to be the city of Halbert.
No, not that I'm aware of. You might call it sunshine.
Yeah, we could call it all kinds of great things, so.
But yeah, it's totally that local decision.
Thank you.
Quinny West was because there was going to be a Quinny East. So, which was an amalgamation further east. But it stopped. It's 30 years later. And things are, at least the way I observe, it's when businesses start naming themselves Quinny West Automotive or Quinny West this. The name and the community are gelling. Right? It just takes a little bit.
Matter what the name is, as long as we can get as close to Shangri-La as possible.
There you go.
Yes. Councilman Phelps.
And I know the answer to this, but I wouldn't mind you explaining it is, because again, there's all this talk that places are going to be paying for the water and sewer system in Minden, which is not the case. So, or the Dysart septic treatment plant or anything. There is legislation for that, but if we could maybe just have that.
Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Mayor. Really good question, and it's something that we need to, I think, continue to explain to people so there's no misunderstandings or misconceptions. So when it comes to your water and wastewater utilities, the people that pay for those utilities are the benefiting users of the systems. So you're not going to have ratepayers from other corners of Halliburton County pay any form of the fees for maintaining your water and wastewater services. Similarly, we've talked a little bit about debt. If some municipalities have debt and some municipalities have reserves, the municipalities that have reserves, the funding that's been contributed to those reserves is from the residents that live in that community, and it belongs to that community. So then those funds would be safeguarded and reserved for the use in that area, in that township. Similarly with debt, that debt would have to be maintained and paid for by the individuals from that ward or that jurisdiction until it's paid. And then over time, I think what you would have is you'd have something that starts to build up and a little bit of an equalization, right? So there'd be common reserves for the overall area. And then debt that's taken on would be debt that's for projects that benefit the entire, as an example.
I think similarly, tax rates don't necessarily have to be uniform across the whole area. No, in other areas where you've had changes, somebody may have had garbage pickup and somebody else didn't. There may be all sorts of services that are different in a certain geographic area, and that may generate a tax rate that's different somewhere else.
Yep.
I think maybe, at some point you try to bring it all together, but there could be discrimination based on services that go on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We call it area rating, based on the service. So you do have different tax rates for different areas because the services are different. Once you harmonize the services, if you ever get there, then you end up at a more general rate. And now there are different ways of providing the services too. In marine, some about water and wastewater. There's different avenues for the delivery of service now in those things, like a municipal service corporation, for instance. That might be something the council might look at going forward for water and wastewater. So there's different ways of delivery of services that might work for an organization, municipality, or even current. So,
Are there any other questions?
It's disappointing for me because I thought maybe some of the other townships were going to help pay for a new arena, but I guess that's not going to happen.
your user fees, I guess. is
That's
one way of saying.
Right. Do you have anything else that you want to?
No, just a request, the forms or the little surveys that we've given you. If you have them done, we'll happily take them away. If you don't have them, we can get them from Cynthia, I think, when you've done them. But it's important for us, for you to have your say through those particular little tools. And we'll make sure we look at, pay attention to them. We really appreciate the time that you've given us for this. Thank you so much.
Well, we very much appreciate the time that you've given us and explaining this and explaining where we are today and the commitment to providing further information as we go along, because unless we are all working from the same set of facts and getting the information, we know full well that nature abhors a vacuum, and the gossip mill abhors not having factual information out there. So this is going to be important for this whole process, particularly in the later stages as it gets into the time of the real time of the election. So we have a resolution.
Moved by Councillor Sisson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell, that council receives a presentation provided by EORN to gather council's input for the community-wide affordability and governance structure studies information.
All those in favor? It's carried. Take a break, okay? We can do the resolution when we get back. Okay. All right. Let's just. Okay. We're, yeah. We're gonna take a break until 2:25. All right, welcome back. We start with a motion to go into closed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Counselor Sisson. Be it resolved that council proceeds into closed session at 2:25 PM for the purpose of discussing one item pursuant to section 239(2)(f of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, legal advice.
All those in favor? That is carried. Welcome back. Resolution.
Moved by Counselor Ingram, seconded by Counselor Saney. Be it resolved that closed session adjourned and open session resumes at 2:48 PM.
All those in favor? It's carried.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell. Be it resolved that direction given in closed session be approved.
All those in favor? Carried. Yep.
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Counselor Sisson, that bylaw 2661 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its special meeting of June 18th, 2026, be received, read a first time, considered, read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All those in favor? It's carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Counselor McKelvey. Be it resolved that the June 18th, 2026 special council meeting is hereby adjourned at 2:49 PM.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everybody. Your next regular council meeting is Thursday, June 25th at 9 AM. So don't get used to this 1 o'clock starting thing. I was remiss in May, but I will catch up with it now and say, everybody enjoy Father's Day this weekend. Oh, yes, and anybody who's listening and can make it out, we have an appreciation night tonight for all the veterans who went through the flood of 2026. So come out to the community center and enjoy. And be certain to watch Councillor Ingram on the bouncy castle. Bye now.